Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Engelson. I'm the Executive Director of Wisconsin Lakes. So welcome to our annual membership meeting here in December of 2022. I'm glad to have you here. It's a kind of lightly snowy night here in South Central Wisconsin. I hope everything's pretty and not too bad where you are. And happy holiday season to everyone as well. So we're going to start out, if I can get the slide to advance, just going over a little bit of housekeeping stuff. As I was saying before we started recording, we are on the Zoom webinar function. So any questions that you want to ask, if you can use the Q&A function to type them in, that's available at the bottom of the screen. And you should be able to see what other questions are asked, and you can upvote those so that just by liking them, by doing that, then Dan will be able to see if there's a question that is of wide interest to the audience, but we'll do our best to get through as many questions as we can. As I said, we've got a lot to cover, and so we may not be able to get through everything. The session is being recorded, including the chat and the questions and answers. You won't be able to talk throughout the session. If we have time, we will be able to try to unmute you, and we'll go over that if we have time when that happens. But the video of the session will be posted on our Wisconsin Lakes YouTube channel for public viewing, hopefully by the end of the week, if not a little bit sooner. It depends on how long it takes for Zoom and then YouTube to process the videos for me to be able to get them all uploaded and everything. All right. Oops. So a quick look at the agenda. We'll be turning things over to our board president, Kathy Erickson, here in just a moment to give a welcome and some director introductions. And then we'll take a brief history of Wisconsin Lakes for those of you who don't know our organization. This is a membership meeting, but we did invite anyone that wanted to come, so some of you may not be familiar with us. We'll go over the organization a little bit, talk about our financials for the last couple of years, as it is an annual meeting, so you want to report on your financials. We'll give a report on our membership as well, talk about what we did in 2022. I'll give a quick update on what's happened in the world of lake policy and water policy in the state in the recent year, and look at what we're doing in 2023 and beyond. And at the very end, hopefully we'll still have some time to take some questions before we adjourn. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our board president, Kathy Erickson, who's been our president for a number of years now. I truly enjoy working with her. And so take it away, Kathy.
All right. Well, the first thing I want to do is officially call this meeting to order and welcome all of you who have joined us. Like Mike said, we're happy to have both members and non-members, and we have the majority of our board. We might be missing one at this point, but I'm so glad that the whole board could be here too. Our Wisconsin Lakes Board of Directors has 12 volunteer directors, most of whom are here today, like I said. These directors come from diverse backgrounds and bring different skills and provide leadership to the organization from a variety of perspectives. So I'll start out by introducing all of them. Can you put the picture up, Mike? Or I'll start.
You want me to do the live shot?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You bet.
I'll start by telling you where I'm from. My husband and I live here on Stone Lake, which is in northwest Wisconsin, just on the border between Washburn and Sawyer counties. I live in our local lake organization for Stone Lake, as well as our countywide Washburn County Lakes and Rivers. But most of my time I put into this group because I think it's the most important for me. Derek Kavanaugh is not here right now, correct? But he is our vice president, and he may be joining us in a few minutes as well. Derek comes from Green Lake County. He works in the Green Lake County Land and Conservation Department, and so he's got a lot of experience there that is helpful to our organization and our members. Dave Zellinger is our treasurer. Dave is in Shawano County, and his affiliations are the Shawano Area Waterways Management and the Waterways Association of Menominee and Shawano Counties, WAMSCO. He gives me the tongue twisters. Kristen Charlton, you there, Chris? Want to wave? Is from Eau Claire County, and she's active in the Lake Eau Claire Association. Then we have Dan Butkus, who's also our moderator tonight. Dan is from Oneida County and partly from Dane County too. His lake is in Oneida and his main home is in Dane, so he wears two hats. His lake is Squash Lake. Rick Georgeson is one of our new directors this year. He's from the West Central region, where he works with the Pettenwell and Castle Rock Stewards, Packers. Some of you have heard of them before. And that covers 3 counties, Adams, Juneau, and Wood. Nick Holman is from the Northeast. Some of you have seen Nick at the convention wearing his kilt and talking to you about landscaping. His business is called Landscape Solutions, and it's a company that does shoreland restorations and landscaping designed to help preserve the natural resources. Caroline Joyce is from the Southeast region. Her home is Heartland in Waukesha County, and she volunteers with the Lake Country Clean Waters group. And you'll see Caroline in the new edition of Lake Tides because she just graduated from Lake Leaders. Rick Moses Jr. Joins us from Menominee County, where he works with the Legend Lake Protection and Rehabilitation District, and we're very happy to welcome him as a new director as well. Christopher Sampson lives in Green Bay, but his lake is Cloverleaf Lakes Association in Shawano County. And Bob Schell is from Vilas County. He works with the Town of St. Germain Town Lakes Committee and also the Found Lake Property Owners Association. And Susan Trier, another new director this year. She's from Jefferson County in the South Central region, and her affiliation is Rock Lake Improvement Association, where she's done a bunch of different projects. So this is our board. We're lucky to have such a wonderful group that works well together and has fun together and brings all kinds of skills to us. Next, now you can move back to the slides, Mike, possibly. There's a summary of the names. And the next slide. This gives you an overview because in addition to the different skills that we look for in directors, we also realize that it's very important for a statewide organization to have geographic diversity. You can see the numbers here: Northwest 1, North Central 2, West Central 3, Northeast 4, South Central 1, and Southeast 1. So I guess we're heavier in the middle, but we do have all of the regions covered, and we strive to maintain that. The next topic will be the brief history of the organization. Are you going to do that, Mike?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do it since Derek's not here.
Okay.
So very quickly, just a little bit about Wisconsin Lakes, who we are, what we do. The organization is 30 years old, turned 30, I believe it was in May of this year. It formed at that time as the merger of two existing organizations, the Wisconsin Association of Lake Districts and the Wisconsin Federation of Lakes, which was the Association of Associations. When it merged, it was known as the Wisconsin Association of Lakes, which it continued to be known as until 2009, when we decided to drop the term association because we felt it made it a little hard for individuals to feel like they had a place when it seemed like it was more of an association of associations, and that's not really what we had become. And so we are both an organization of lake organizations and individuals who really care about our lakes. So we promote healthy lakes, obviously, and we do that by providing education and technical assistance to lake organizations. Much of what we do is advocating for sound science-based lake policy that's both with the legislature, with the DNR and other state agencies, and also teaching you and organizations to be advocates. And I'll talk a little bit about that later in the meeting. And then we work with regional and statewide partners to promote and accomplish our mission. We do that as part of what's called the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Partnership. The partnership is a very unique, I don't know of anywhere else in the country that has anything quite like this. It's the Department of Natural Resources, the Lakes and Rivers section, the Extension Lakes program, which is based out of the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. So if you've attended convention or done anything with Eric Olson or Sarah Winju, Patrick Goggin, those are all people that work for Extension Lakes. They kind of represent the academic wing of the partnership. And then Wisconsin Lakes represents sort of the citizen wing. We've always been the Wisconsin Lakes Partnership, and there's been debate over the last few years whether we should really become the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Partnership, something that I actually am in favor of, because we do a lot of work with other organizations as well that even though historically these three groups have been sort of named the pillars of the partnership, groups like the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network, the wave stream monitors, the River Alliance of Wisconsin, all sorts of county conservation shops all across the state, and many other organizations, watershed groups and things like that, all really work together. And that's, if you attend the Lakes Convention, you would see that there's all sorts of stuff going on. So we really are more than just the Lakes and Rivers Partnership. And in some talks, I actually talk about us as the Wisconsin Waters Partnership. But it is a really strong, unique relationship that has really done a lot for our lakes and water resources in the state, and Wisconsin Lakes is proud to have been a part of that. So with that, we will move on into the financial part of the meeting, I believe. And so Dave Zellinger is going to talk a little bit about where we are at as an organization financially.
Okay, hello everyone. At least on my screen, 2021 is kind of hidden. I do have the numbers in front of me. Is there a way to move the board up at the top?
It's probably not too simply, and yeah. I am not having any problem seeing it. So
okay, well that's fine because I got it in front of me. I'll talk about 2021 first of all, and I'll mainly focus on revenue and the things in 2021 that stick out and are kind of one-time events. One was the PPP loan forgiveness. That's a Paycheck Protection Program loan that we got in 2020. We received forgiveness for that loan in 2021, so that was almost $20,000 in revenue. That was a one-time windfall that we had there. And then the other big thing we have to include it because of IRS regulations, but restricted revenue. We had $134,000 of restricted revenue. Now that's made up of money that is earmarked for the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention and for the Red Cedar Conference. We really can't spend that money. It's the conference's money to spend for their part of it, and the Red Cedar Convention conference to spend. So we're just kind of the money managers for those funds. So even though our total revenue for 2021 looks really great and the net revenue looks really great, we can't touch all that money. Switching over to 2022, the numbers we have here are only for the first 10 months of the year. We do have some restricted revenue that came from the Lakes and Rivers Convention this year. So again, we can't touch that money. But we did have grants this year that's represented here as surface water grants. I believe, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Packer grant that we received of $8,000 is not on here yet.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was only $4,000.
Oh, was it 4? Okay, we didn't get the total
Yeah,
amount.
it was 4, but no, it is not on there yet.
Yeah,
so.
okay. Okay, and then we did, every year we receive $5,000 of convention revenue that is ours to spend. So that's the top line there. But the thing I wanted to focus on was individuals and organizations. The individuals are individual memberships and donations that people give us. It doesn't look all that good relative to 2021, but remember, this is only for the first 10 months of the year, and our big push for fundraising is really in the last quarter of the year. In fact, I just received my fund request or donation request, I think last Saturday in the mail. So if you remember, you should be receiving that or have already received that soon. And please try to remember us at the end of the year. And then organizations also were a little behind, but we think we'll catch up by the end of the year. Also, if you're a member and your organization is not a member, please try to get them to join as an organization. We can't do our work without the money that we need to fund us. So, you know, if you want our help, or need our help, it's your money that keeps us going. You know, really, the individuals and organizations are our biggest sources of revenue. And so I can't stress that enough. Anything else you want me to point out, Mike?
No, you mentioned the Packer grant. I was going to mention that a couple of us actually get to go to an event at Lambeau Field to receive that on Thursday. We're excited about that. That actually will go to help us do our carrying capacity study work and some of the recreational impact work that we're working on.
I guess the other thing to point out is total expenses are down this year, but that's partly due to we don't have an office anymore, so we're not paying rent on office and equipment, and Dave Pausch has cut back on his hours, so we're saving a little money there too.
Exactly. All right. And we will have a break here in a moment for some questions, but unless you have something else, Dave, I'll move on to the membership report.
No, I'm good.
All right. So Dave Pausch, who you see here in the picture and will be speaking via pre-recorded video in just a moment, couldn't be here tonight. Just to compare apples to oranges here, the number of members, both individual and organizational here, and what Dave is talking about from the membership standpoint is based on up-to-date numbers. So the financials had not really been completely looked at through October. Those were the last approved reports we have. So that's why we reported to the end of October. So these numbers are a little more complete. So you'll see we actually had more organizational members to date than we did last year, though, as Dave will explain, that probably is just a reason of timing. While he's talking, if you want to check out over here on the right side what the benefits are of being a member, ultimately, I think as Dave Zellinger pointed out, the both our individual and our organizational memberships and contributions really help support most of what we do. And especially the advocacy work. It's very hard to get grants that would pay for lobbying, pay for even just general the teaching of advocacy and things like that. So that is very helpful. So now I'm going to turn things over in the recorded fashion to our membership and development director, Dave.
Say, Mike, Dave's audio is not coming through.
Thank you. Let me stop the share for just a second, and because I forgot to click the share sound. I practiced this 10 times before this meeting, told myself, do not forget to click share sound, and I did. Let me get back into here. Here we go.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Dave Pausch, and I handle membership for Wisconsin Lakes. So when you send your membership renewals back in, whether they're individual or organizational, I'm the one that processes them and puts them into the database. I've done a report on these annual meetings before. I couldn't be there this year, so I'm just sending a video. Just wanted to let you kind of all know just a quick thumbnail of where we're at from our membership position. Currently, individual members, we have 421. To date last year, we had 441, so it's a little below that. We don't think that's really an issue. It's probably more to do with mailing timing and people just getting their membership renewals back in. That's pretty much a static number, I would consider it, static from last year. So not too worried, don't feel like membership is going down, just feel like it's a timing issue. From an organizational standpoint, we're at 259 this year. We were at 253 at this point last year. Again, that difference could just probably be to do with the mechanics of getting the memberships back in and people renewing. And then lastly, I just wanted to kind of tell you kind of where we are total donations this year. We have 537 to date. That's as of today, which I believe is December 5th. Last year at this time, we were at 621, so we're a little below, about 80 donations below we were last year. Again, a lot of that probably has to do with mailing timing. Last year's end of the year appeal went out prior to Thanksgiving. This year's went out after Thanksgiving. So it's been in your hands a little less of a time. You probably haven't had a chance to send things back in. But if you haven't made your end of the year donation to Wisconsin Lakes, sorry, I almost said membership rather than Wisconsin Lakes. If you haven't made your end of the year gift to Wisconsin Lakes, we urge you to do it right now. Individual donations are a major source of our funding, and the end of the year campaign is one of our biggest of the year. So yeah, if you haven't had a chance to mail your contribution yet, please do so. If you have, thank you very much. That's all I have for now. Mike will elaborate a little more, but I hope you have a wonderful holiday season and a great new year, and see you next year. Bye.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pausch. And with that, we will have some time for questions. Dan, what do we have?
Well, I have a comment. Hold on, I need to go to the right screen and pull it up. From John Humphreys, he passes along thanks to all the volunteers. I answered that through the question and answer box already, and we appreciate his comments. We had also another comment that I had addressed myself. Is it Craig Butler? Yes. Was asking if there's anything in state regs coming down the pike to regulate wake boats in Wisconsin. I had mentioned that you would likely get to that in your discussion on legislative action.
No, I've
Um,
never heard that question before. I don't know what he's talking about. Oh, yeah, I will touch on that.
And I have a question from David Baldus regarding the discussion on memberships and organizations, and he asked, do fishing clubs join Wisconsin Lakes? And I was going to answer, not that I was aware of, but you may have a different take on that.
Yeah, I don't think that we have very many non-traditional groups from what we traditionally were as the Association of Associations, essentially. So it's mostly been lake organizations. There are a handful of homeowner groups that I know of. I think there may have been a fishing club or two. There's nothing that would prevent any entity from joining us in that capacity. So if you know of any groups that are interested, we would be happy to welcome them to the fold. The only caveat I will make is that one of the benefits of being an organizational member, if you are an association, so it doesn't work for districts because districts are a governmental body, and insurance for districts is a different question. But if you're a nonprofit lake association and a member of Wisconsin Lakes, you have access to a directors and officers insurance policy through us, through the Horton Group. That is an umbrella policy. I believe the premium was it was just under $600 this year. The big advantage is that you don't have to go through underwriting. You're just automatically qualified. We just need to let them know that you are interested. We hook you up with the right person, and then you can go from there. And I'm not sure if the way that policy is written, if a group that is not in a lake association per se would be able to get that policy or not. I'd have to clarify that, but that is one benefit of being an organizational member.
And just before we get to the next question, I did want to let everyone know we've been hovering around 78 participants besides the board of directors. So we've exceeded last year's attendance by quite a bit. So thank you everybody for attending. Michelle Goodeve asks, are business partners allowed to participate in the year-end fundraising?
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't have any restrictions on corporate giving or anything like that. So if your business is interested in participating with us, that would be absolutely awesome. There are also sponsorship opportunities with the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention. So some of that money goes back to us as Wisconsin Lakes, but a good chunk of it stays with the convention. So if you as a business gave to Wisconsin Lakes at the end of the year or at any point in the year, that would go directly to all of the stuff that we are doing as our own organization. So the advocacy and education work that we do.
And I'm going to wrap this up with the questions. Jill Edwards has raised her hand, so I'm going to allow her to talk so she can ask her question. I assume that's Jill Leyer raising your hand. So Jill, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute, you should be able to ask your question. Oh, she's lowered her hand.
If you didn't want to speak, but still want to ask a question, you can go ahead and type it in the Q&A.
Oh, it was, she's typed it in the Q&A. It was just about the no sound on the Dave Pausch video. So we got that handled, so. Good enough. Thanks, Jill. And I think that ends all the questions in the Q&A box. We're good.
All right, great. Well, we will move on to the next section then. Of course, there will be more opportunities to ask questions as well, but I'm going to bring Kathy back into the fold now, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of our accomplishments so far in 2022.
Hey, thanks, Mike. I'm going to take you through an overview of the accomplishments, and then Mike will elaborate on a couple of the bigger ones. So you might have questions about what I'm saying, but in some areas he will answer. First category is support of member organizations. We know that's really important to you. It's really important to us. And we get direct questions by phone, email, and Zoom. Most of those go to Mike. Some of them come to the directors, and we can field them. Once in a while, we can even answer them. But often those also get passed on to Mike. And sometimes they're easy to answer. It can be like, who do I consult about this kind of lake management problem? Or they may be longer and take a lot more to delve into, like questions about organizational management and even advocacy. So we all do our best with that. Sometimes Mike gets really busy and we have to prioritize, but we answer hundreds of questions through the year. The other area under support is Lake Kit. Many of you have probably heard of this by now. It's our growing program that provides easy development and maintenance of websites for lake organizations. We've also used it for the Northwest Wisconsin Lakes Conference, and it's worked very well there. Mike will tell you more about that when I turn this floor back to him. The next area would be the events and the Wisconsin Lakes Partnership. We were all happy that the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention was back in person this year. We had more than 500 participants, and or close to 500 participants. We do that along with the rest of the partnership, the Extension Lakes and the WDNR. And we're looking forward to this year's conference being in April. It's April 19th to 21st. I should say not this year, but 2023. Registration for that will be starting in January. A lot of regional and local lake events were back in person this year. And some of them that Mike participated in, or others of the directors worked on: the Northwest Wisconsin Lakes Conference, the Red Cedar Watershed Conference, the 6-County North Central Lakes Conference, Lakes Country Clean Waters Healthy Lakes Conference, the Walworth County Lakes Association, and the Rock River Coalition Confluence. Those are great opportunities for people and organizations within a certain area to share information that's especially pertinent to their work. And the Wisconsin Lake Leaders Institute, back in person again too. It was Crew 14. I go way back to Crew 8, but I think it's just about the best program I can imagine for teaching people how to care for their lakes and take leadership in that. The Advanced Lake Leaders will be held in 2023. With that program, lake leaders from all the previous crews are invited to attend one session during the summer. And then in 2024, we'll be moving on to Crew 15. Next slide. Okay, managing recreational impacts. This we know is the big one. And Mike will talk more about that too. But what we've accomplished this year is to form a working group that included a couple of directors and other people who we knew were interested from around the state to discuss options and strategy. we had a workshop at the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention in March. And we have collaborated with Wisconsin and national groups who are working on this same problem of enhanced wakes. We're not the only state, obviously, that is facing this and trying to figure out what's the right balance and how to deal with it. Their carrying capacity studies are part of that. Mike keeps in touch with the goings on in the other states, and we've had reports at our different regional conferences and at the state conference, and Wisconsin Lakes assisted Minnesota in reporting on their findings. Another different area is studying the boater attitudes towards AIS and specifically decontamination of their watercraft. The idea here is that we need to know what boaters are receptive to, otherwise they won't comply with our requests, and we can't have people at the landings all the time. So that study started this year, and we've had a preliminary report, and the final report will be coming out in early 2023. As far as policy development, the slide says Mike advocates for legislation and administrative rules that protect our water. Even before he starts that advocacy, he has to do a lot of homework, always watching to see what's going on and keeping in touch with other environmental groups and identifying those acts that might affect our lakes. And then we're also working on the revision package for Chapter 33 for the lake districts to clarify, basically to clarify those laws and make it more straightforward.
All right.
Back to Mike.
And I think, yeah, with that, we have some time for any questions that have come up, Dan.
There are no.
What we.
Oh, sorry. There's no questions in the Q&A at the moment.
All right.
And nobody has raised their hand, I see. Why don't we just give it a minute in case somebody is typing?
It has been a busy year, and I echo Kathy's the sentiments of being able to be in person at all of the events that I attended this year. It was really great. Being able to see a lot of people, I was able to also attend some events that were not were more national or regional conferences to do some presentations and learn some things from other places and get some other voices, and that was great.
We have a question. Jill Edward, is there any information on forming a town lakes committee?
That's a good one, Jill. We don't have any. I don't have anything necessarily put together. We do have. There are a number of town lakes committees around the state, and maybe one or two of our directors might even want to chime in on that as well. If you want to reach out later to me directly, maybe we can have a talk about what that might look like and get you in connection with the right people.
I would add that our lake used to be part of a town lakes committee in the town of Crescent in Oneida County. That committee kind of fizzled and really hasn't gone anywhere, but there are a number within Oneida County, number of town lakes committees that are active. And it's really something that the town government usually gets behind with the support of the lakes, and that it's a collaborative effort. And so if you don't have one, I would suggest getting a hold of your town board of supervisors and advocate for it.
Absolutely.
We've had a couple of other questions come in. can we give a little bit of background on chapter 33? We'll let
Yeah,
Mike
I'll
handle
hold.
that because we can get into that, I think, a little later. Mike, is that right?
Yeah, I'll get into that in more detail here in just a little bit.
Okay. So hold on to that question, and we should answer that. John Humphreys, he's good to see the revenues. Could you share information on expenses? Thanks. I assume
Yeah,
that
and
John is asking what types of expenses we have.
sure. I unfortunately don't have the numbers right in front of me. I will say that our last 990 is up on our website, so you can download that and take a look at it if you would like. That gives some information there. The finance committee members, correct me if I'm wrong, but as you would expect in most organizations, payroll makes up a large chunk of our expenditures, even more so maybe in our entity, because we are a no office organization. So everyone, both Dave Pausch and I, both work remotely from home. So that has saved a lot of costs on rent. We have a very low cost internet phone service. So we try to be as lean as we can be on those sorts of things, so that we can focus the dollars on the programmatic work that we're trying to get done.
Thanks. We've got a couple more questions. Tony Weisbrot asked, Shanklin won her election, and will she continue to work on changing the zoning laws? Rick Georgeson, one of our directors, is currently typing an answer to her. Maybe if he would unmute and give us a verbal answer. I think he's
I'm going to talk about that in the next section too. So.
Oh, okay, super. Then Tony, please wait. Mike will get to it.
That was a great segue.
I have one more question from Shelley Hildebrand.
Sure.
Are you seeking input to Chapter 33 revisions? The answer is yes.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'm sure, as Dan was going to say, we have some ideas put together. We're in the process of sort of still going through and deciding exactly what's going to work, and working with the legislator to talk about what is going to go into that package. But I'll save that for a little bit, even more detail in a little bit.
Oh, and Scott Otterson has a follow-up to that. Will you also be looking at the sanitary districts as well? Because those two chapters of legislative law are nearly identical. Sanitary districts were first, then came lake districts, and they were patterned off sanitary districts. Mike, my answer is I don't think we are delving into the sanitary district issue, just lake district, correct?
Yeah, right now we're only looking at Chapter 33, but I would be open if there were overlapping places. We might be able to take a look at some of the sanitary district stuff as well. Scott, if you want to, if you haven't already, go ahead and send us some thoughts on where you're seeing some problems. We do have a limited amount of things that we can try to get through. We don't want the package to get too big, but that doesn't mean that this isn't something that would come around again in another future effort. So.
Okay.
All right. Should I move on?
Oh, we have one more question pop up at the very end. Let me take a quick look at it. I'm going to paraphrase. It's a long question. Joe Steinhag, sure. He's a new member of the United County Lakes and Rivers Association, and he's learning. And I know Joe, I know he wants to get his feet wet. He wants to know if OCLRA is a member, and if not, should it be, and should other like-minded, like-missioned local organizations also be a part? And the simple answer to that is, believe OCLRA is a member of Wisconsin Lakes. Mike, do you know offhand?
Yeah, so OCLRA is Oneida County Lakes and Rivers. So any county-wide lakes and rivers organization is defined as an affiliate member. So there are no dues for affiliate members. The reason for that is because a county-wide is made up of local lake and river associations already that may be members of Wisconsin Lakes. Rather than double charge, we decided a long time ago not to charge for membership for those organizations. Many of them do still donate to Wisconsin Lakes. But Oneida County, Vilas County, Walworth County, Polk County, there are a number of counties that have organizations, Washburn County, that we all work pretty closely together with them. And if you are not familiar, if your county has a countywide Lake and River Association, feel free to contact us and we can find that out for you. And if it does, we certainly recommend that if you have the bandwidth to try to get with them and see what they're up to. They often will have really informative meetings on different topics that are especially related to the county that you're in.
And specifically to Joe's question, the 6-county conference or convention in the summer that's held up there, Wisconsin Lakes has always been an active participant in that. I know, Mike, you've shown up and given talks to that as well. So yep. Joe points out there is strength in numbers, and he is absolutely right.
Absolutely. All right. I think in order,
we're done
for time, we should move on. And so I will get into a bit of an update on what has been happening in the last year or so in relation to water policy. And the very short answer to that question is not a whole lot. This legislature, coupled with a governor from the opposing party in the executive office, really has sort of tampened down the legislature's actions on environmental policy. So what we saw back in the Walker administration, there was a lot of legislation that would have changed things in very huge ways. In contrast, because I think for two reasons, because the Republican-controlled legislature knew that anything that they were going to do is likely to be vetoed by the governor, and also because they had moved on to other big issues that were important to leadership. Having the pandemic in the middle of all this certainly affected that as well. So there were a handful of bills that passed. There were some that covered some of the things that came out of the speaker's task force on water quality that I don't have on the screen here. They mostly weren't really related to lakes, so I'm not going to go into them in great depth. I believe on the Northwest Wisconsin Lakes Conference website, there is a video of me doing a policy update in which I talked about it. If it's not there, I think there's one from the Lakes Convention, but regardless, the two things that I do want to talk about relate to shoreline zoning, because that is something that we think about a lot in the lakes world. The first was a relatively small bill. All it did was clarify the percentage of a lot's width that could be cleared as a viewing corridor in counties where vegetated buffer zones along the shoreline were required. So it doesn't even apply to some places because the county may not have required a vegetated buffer when the law changed in 2015. But if it did, there was some ambiguous language as to what exactly the size of the corridor was supposed to be. It is now 35%. You have a minimum of 10 feet. You're always going to get 10 feet. But most notably, this was introduced by Republican Senator Mary Felskowski. And her office was very willing to work with us and work with DNR to get that bill to a point where we actually were able to support it. It did clarify the language, and it also, in the end, we were able to get her to agree to accept the what the administrative code, NR 115, had as a maximum width that originally was not in the statutes, and because the statutes trump the administrative code, there was no maximum. It is now a maximum of 200 feet. There was a lot in that right there that may have been confusing. So if you have questions, feel free to ask about that more at the end. And I'm happy to talk about that offline if you want to give me a call or send me an email. The other shoreline zoning bill was already referred to. This was one that was introduced by Representative Katrina Shankland. So it's I'm calling it Returning Shoreline Zoning to 2015. And what that bill would do would be really restore the law to what it was before the shoreline zoning law changed in 2015. You may remember that in the state budget in 2015, the ability for counties to enact shoreline zoning ordinances that were more strict than the state standards or what was in statute was revoked. So basically, counties could be no stronger than the state standards and what was in statute. This would return that local control to counties. The bill was introduced at the end of the session. Representative Shankland is very upfront in admitting that there was no chance that it was going to pass. Actually, I think the legislature had essentially gavelled out of session for the year the day before I think the assembly bill was introduced. But what it does do is it gives us some language to react to. It gives us a platform to kind of use moving forward. And she has confirmed to me that she does plan on reintroducing this in the next session. And we have had some conversations about what it would look like to try to get a campaign going to get us back to the 2015 rules. Is that going to happen next year or the following year? My guess is probably not. It's still going to be a hard sell in a Republican-controlled legislature, quite frankly, but it's not impossible. It's not a completely partisan issue, and I think we need to start advocating for that return as we move forward. To eventually get it, because I think with some concerted effort and some good planning, eventually we will be able to get us back to where we were on shoreline zoning in 2015. There were also
comment on that quickly.
Sure.
Interrupt. But Washburn County Lakes and Rivers has a kind of meet and greet with the candidates for election, and we were talking to our relatively new assemblyman who was running for his second term. This came up, and we stressed how important we think it is. He didn't even know what we were talking about. So this is one where I think it would be really helpful for citizens to be out there talking to their representatives.
Some of us, we talked about this some at the last Lake Leaders session, which focuses on policy and talking to legislators and things. So we kind of used that as a foil for some of that work. And one of the things we talked about actually that I violated that here on this slide, I guess, was that we may not want to talk about returning to the shoreline zoning of 2015 because frankly, a lot of people don't remember, political memories are short. So people have forgotten this. The legislature has turned over quite a lot. So there might be some power to the idea of pitching this as you would be restoring local control to county governments. There certainly would be a lot of pushback from the developers and the realtors, I'm sure, as there was when they were advocating for this back in 2015. But again, it is something that is on our radar, and we are working hard on, and I've been having conversations with her office about it. The next section, rulemakings of note. So rulemakings are when DNR or another state agency is authorized by a statute to flesh out what the rules are regarding what that statute is telling it to do. So there are shoreline zoning rules. There are lots of rules related to different kinds of permitting and things like that. So one set of rules that was up for revision, it had not been revised. The sections had not been revised in quite some time, were the aquatic plant management rules that were in. It's called NR 107 is the section of the administrative code. In the end, those rules were actually pulled by the department because there was some controversy and question over a number of different matters within them. At their heart, Wisconsin Lake supported the ideas that were behind the rulemaking. The idea was that we would move to more of an adaptive management approach in the state. So this is really related to chemical and non-chemical treatment of not just invasive plants, but any plant in a waterway, move to an integrated management policy so that we were trying to take a holistic approach that would really aim to work in the long term and not just be quick fix kind of activities, which could have been which could mean chemical treatments, could mean non-chemical treatments, lots of mix of possibilities. The rule actually didn't take anything out. I think the way it was pitched and the way it was talked about, there was some misunderstandings. There were some other sections that were problematic. And so it was pulled. That rule is dead. It will not be passed. They would have to start an entirely new rulemaking, which rulemakings usually take at least 2 to 3 years. So it would be a couple of years before we see new aquatic plant management rules in the state. There is a new rulemaking that is going underway right now dealing with structures and waterways. There's been some press that I have seen that has tried to paint this as a big attempt to take away piers and things like that. That is not what this is at all. So if you hear anything about this, I am telling you, it really is not anything to be concerned about at this point. I am on a technical advisory group that is working with DNR to go over the different sections. Really what this is just to make some technical fixes to bring rules into compliance with what some statutory changes now have. So this deals with construction practices for getting permits and general permits for putting in piers or habitat structures, construction activities, things like that. My sense is that there is not a lot going on other than just some relatively benign revisions that relate to the statutes and things like that. I'll be continuing to report on that as we go. There have been some work on PFAS. PFAS are the chemicals that they've been sort of branded as the forever chemicals. They don't break down in the once they're in nature. So it's the firefighting foams and things coming off of cookware, fire retardant, things like that. There are some new standards that are up for review. They haven't actually been written yet, but the approval to write them. The EPA released some standards a while ago, and so this would bring our groundwater standards, which I don't believe we have any on PFAS right now, into compliance with those. So we'll be watching that. And then just in general, what we've noticed in all of this, sort of a not so silent hand in most of these rulemakings, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce has a general policy of trying to break down the administrative state in any way that it possibly can. And that's a fairly bold statement for me, for those of you who know how I usually approach talking about policy things, but there really is an attempt, I believe, to frustrate just about any rulemaking that goes on in the state, certainly any that have anything to do with conservation. And so we are watching that as well, and we'll be talking about that more as we go into 2023, I'm sure. And then the last thing in this section that I'll talk about is our Chapter 33 revision project. We kind of already talked about this quite a bit. We've received lots of ideas from lake districts and different stakeholders. Chapter 33 is the state law that relates to how it allows for the creation of lake districts and how they operate. We do have a legislator. Because we haven't released the bill yet, I'm not going to disclose who that person is, but we do have somebody that we are working with. One of the things to keep in mind as we go through this whole thing is that with any bill, especially any bill that deals with local governments and deals with things that are taxing authorities, there are pluses and minuses to opening that can of worms, shall we say, in these days. So we want to be very careful that whatever it is that we put together, finally, whatever pieces want to end up going into that bill are things that we really do believe that are going to get some bipartisan support and will pass. I do believe that there's quite a lot that we will be able to get done, but it may not be everything, and there may be some places that we don't want to go because we don't necessarily want to bring attention to areas that may end up being controversial and have some unintended consequences because of that. We've been working on this, as some of you know, for quite some time. The decision was sort of made that in 2022, with the elections coming up, with a legislature that actually they gavelled out, as I said, it was early or middle March that they really stopped doing any floor work. There was not a good time to bring this bill or this package into play in this session. So we made the decision to wait until 2023, and we're still deciding exactly when the best time in 2023 will be for that to happen. I'm presuming that it's probably going to be earlier rather than later. Some of the things that we have talked about that I am pretty sure will make the final cut of what goes in there. The bid limit for the limit where the minimum amount where you have to send purchases out for bid as a lake district is currently set in the statutes at, I believe, $2,500 and hasn't been changed since 1977. That figure gets more and more ridiculous as every day goes on and prices continue to rise. So we'll be looking at getting that revised. And there are a number of other places as well. We'll be talking more about this as we go through the year as well. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add, since you're sort of the other person on the board that's working on this issue with me?
Well, no, I think everyone just kind of stay tuned. Like you said, Mike, we're working on it. There are currently a large number of ideas to try to clarify. And it's really just trying now to pare down and choose the ones that have the most success, the highest likelihood of success of making it through. Certainly the minimum bid requirement was one that popped up very early. But if other people have other ideas, we encourage them to send them in. Whether or not we've already have it on our list doesn't matter. It does show support. So.
All right, maybe we have time for maybe one or two questions, and then maybe we'll save the rest for the end because we're running a little bit behind schedule. And I do want to make sure we get into.
We have one question. I do want to, before I go over this question, I want to go back to the first thing that you talked about, which was Act 200. And I think it's important that we point out to people that Act 200 started as a request from a county, actually Oneida County, and it was dogged by one of the county supervisors, Bob Tomey. But there was also input from a number of citizens in this discussion, as well as I participated in that and worked with Mike. So for people who believe it's awfully hard to get things done through the legislature, It's true, but collaborative effort does pay off. It does help. We were able to collectively steer this in, I think, the right direction, and get that change. It sounds kind of trivial, but it does present it did present a number of difficulties for counties in trying to regulate what the access and viewing corridor width should be. So with that said, we have one question and then we'll move on from David Baldus. He's asking, and this goes back to your comment about permanent structures. He's like, what about permanent piers?
So the rulemaking that we're dealing with, to be completely honest, we've only had one meeting so far, and I'm still reading and learning exactly which sections of code that we're talking about. I don't think that rulemaking will actually have anything to do with permanent structures. I think this is all just temporary structures. And I know David's had some questions about permanent piers, I believe, in the past. That's probably something that we just need to get together and talk about. So, but what I was talking about there, I don't believe that permanent structures will be a part of that.
Thanks, Mike. In the meantime, Christina, who I'm going to mispronounce your name, Christina Fiesca, came in with a question on Chapter 33. One of the big issues for them, they have very large annual meetings. It's always who gets to vote. You and everybody else in the state asks that question.
Yeah. That's like right behind wake boats in the, which I will get to, by the way. I'm still getting to wake boat stuff.
So the answer, Christina, is yes, that is on our list. Whether or not it makes the final cut, it is one of my pet peeves. So hopefully we'll get that on the final cut. Joseph Pizik, he's not shy about writing and calling his local elected official. He just says, let us know what you want us to do and what to write them. Email the members, and I do know, Joe, that a number of our members are extremely active, and you're right. They do take up the call, and they're not shy, and so I think we will continue to do that.
Yeah, and you will see more active communications from us this year, especially with the budget coming up. There will be quite a lot to talk about, so there will be a much more active communications going forward on policy issues as well. So, all right,
I think that wraps up the questions. I don't really have any more, so.
All right, so let's talk a little bit then about what's going to come up next year, what we're looking at for 2023. Quite honestly, you're going to see a lot of the same sort of things that we talked about as to what happened in 2022, because much of what we're doing just follows right on the heels of what we had been doing. So one of the big things, the big programs that we have that we hope at least is helpful to lake organizations is, Kathy talked about this a little bit already, is our LakeKit website platform. The idea behind LakeKit is that we want to provide websites for as low a cost as possible. So at least right now, we don't plan on raising the fees anytime soon. They may need to go up at some point, but right now it costs $75 a year for a Wisconsin Lakes member, or $100 a year for a non-member organization to get a website through LakeKit. So what does that mean? Well, LakeKit, I won't go into the whole structure of what LakeKit is. I'm happy to talk to you about that offline sometime, but it basically allows us to be able to do all of the back-end management. So we do the backups, we update the plugins, we make sure that the licenses are all active and all that sort of stuff. We have a contract with a professional that manages those sorts of things. that just leaves you to be able to do what you want with your site with a little more flexibility perhaps than you would get from some like a GoDaddy or a Wix. Not that there's anything wrong with those systems, but obviously at an extremely lower cost than what you would get elsewhere. So we have about 50 sites right now. We've just gone through, well, we're still going through a transition to a new server architecture that will give us even a little bit more flexibility in what we're able to do. We're still getting that set up, and then we'll be able to it'll be a little more cost effective for us, and also enable us to do a few more things, at least in the back end. But the other piece that I want to talk about with LakeKit is that it's all volunteer run, except for the person that we contract with. So we have a steering committee of 3 members. The whole program was actually created by a lake leader, maybe it's got to be getting close to 8 years ago, I think, at least. He still is part of the steering committee, and we have a couple other volunteers. We need more volunteers too. We really want this to be a volunteer based community, so that people start talking to each other about what they're doing with their websites, ideas that they have, and sort of training each other. So if you get a LakeKit site, you'll get trained by one of our volunteers on the editor that we use. I can't remember if I mentioned, but it's we use the WordPress platform to build the sites. It's a fairly easy editor to use. If you've ever looked at the Northwest Wisconsin Lakes Conference website, or wisconsinwaterweek.org, which is the home of the Lakes and Rivers Convention, those are both LakeKit sites, so you can get an idea of what those might look like. We also have this vision that LakeKit is more than just the website platform. It's also really an educational endeavor to get the Lakes community thinking about how it uses electronic communications. So in 2023, we have a whole webinar series that is in the planning stages, where we'll talk about things like best website practices, social media strategies for lakes, integrated electronic communications. We've got some grant requests out to try to bring in some professionals to talk about those sorts of things. So make sure that you watch wisconsinlakes.org and lakekit.net and our emails to find out when those sorts of things are coming. And if you are interested in LakeKit, just send me an email, and I'll set up a time to talk with you, probably on Zoom, so I can show you some things, and we'll get you started. There's no obligation, and you can tell for the amount we're charging for this, we really are not. This is not a revenue generating endeavor for us by any stretch. I mean, it really is just trying to be able to provide this really crucial information dissemination tool to lake organizations in the state to help build the communication structures for waters in Wisconsin. We also are doing continuing our advocacy work, so we'll keep doing what we've been doing. Next year, new legislature sits, and it is a budget year. So the first part of the year, from late January through probably fairly deep into May, we'll be working on advocating for just different pieces of the state budget. The politics of the state really have not changed that much in the last few years, so I think we're going to have a repeat of what we've seen in the past. The legislature will most likely be creating its own budget. Might take some ideas from what Governor Evers proposes, but we'll be watching that for any cuts to crucial funding like the stewardship fund. We'll be advocating, I'm sure, for increases in the budget for county conservationists, for boating enforcement aids. Most of the same kinds of policy issues are going to come up again in this budget that have come up in the past. We already talked a little bit about rulemakings in the Chapter 33 revision, so I won't talk about those, but I do want to talk about where you come into play. I think Joe mentioned contacting his legislator and being in contact with people. We want to help you learn how to do that. not only for yourself, but also for your organization. So this is a program that we've had in place for a number of years. We call it Lakes in Action. That's not Lake in Action, but Lakes in Action. And they are advocacy trainings that we have a workshop that we have put together that we can do, thankfully, in person now. So I've had some requests for having some of those done, which I'm working on. And I'm also hoping to have some sort of online webinar series started next year that will go into those sorts of trainings as well. So this is everything from how to actually talk to your legislator, how to contact them, how to build a campaign, what you can do as a 501c3 organization, which is actually a lot more than many people think it is. And that's something important to get out, that if your organization does want to be an advocate on a single issue or on a bunch of issues, there's actually a lot you can do as a C3. Wisconsin Lakes is a C3, that before you run afoul of your tax exemption laws and things like that. So watch wisconsinlakes.org for more info on all of that. We have lots of events coming up in 2023. Almost all of them are back in person, at least at this point. Knock on wood that nothing else happens between now and then. The Red Cedar Watershed Conference, which I'm on the steering committee for, we ended up canceling last year, but it'll be back in play March 9th at UW Stout. This is really about both water and people and agricultural practices in the Red Cedar River Basin in western Wisconsin. The Lakes Tanner and Mahnomen there have huge algae problems from runoff, and so this will be the I think the 10th in-person event where we'll be getting together to talk about solutions to that. We've talked a lot about the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention. The registrations for Lakes and Rivers will start opening in January, so watch for that. The Northwest Wisconsin Lakes Conference is in Spooner, probably in June. Still finalizing some of the details on all of that, but it looks like it'll be in Spooner on June 23. And then there are those other regional events. And then the last one I want to talk about is in the box at the bottom here. I'm calling it Managing Recreational Impacts to Lake Regional Conversations. Those will be coming in the winter and the spring of 2023. We're just beginning the planning for these. The idea behind this is we want to get lakes within a region together to talk about what their issues are in relation to regional recreational impacts, where they've found solutions. And by recreational impacts, I mean everything from impacts from increased traffic, from more powerful traffic. This is where wake boats come into play, the enhanced wake impacts. Also, aquatic invasive species issues could come into play there. Just how the lakes are being used and by people, and what lakes are doing about managing that, and what they need to do, and where we can help out. So it'd be less of a conference. There may be some educational presentations. I'd like to see maybe someone come in and talk about enforcement issues, maybe have someone from the DNR law enforcement come in, and maybe some other things. But mostly we're going to try to design it around lakes talking to lakes. So watch for that coming out. Probably my thinking right now is that we'll probably have the events, and I'm hoping to have at least 2 or 3 in different places in the state, probably more in the spring, so that if you are someone that overwinters in Florida or Arizona, you'll be able to actually come to them, because we do want to have them in person. Speaking of that whole recreational impact program, how am I doing on time? I got to get through this, I think. Recreational impacts is the main focus of what we are doing here at Wisconsin Lakes. We've broken our deep dive into this issue into 4 components. So there's research. We are not able to do a whole lot of research ourselves because of capacity, but we do support entities that do research. On the enhanced wake front, there is work that was done by North Lake in Southeast Wisconsin with Carroll College or Carroll University. There's also some a major study that is still going on in its second phase now out at the University of Minnesota on enhanced wakes. And as Kathy mentioned, in collaboration with a lot of other national organizations, we sort of have a clearinghouse of studies that are going on that look at different boating impact studies. So we're trying to help support all of those sorts of things. That all feeds into our educational efforts. This year at the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention, we're not just going to do a workshop, but we're going to have a whole stream. So one of the breakout rooms will be essentially all taken up both the Thursday and Friday of the convention with sessions on managing recreational impacts. So we'll have everything from how the public trust doctrine is implicated by this, down to some nuts and bolts things, some case studies of lakes that have been able to work with the boaters on their lake to maybe improve situations. There'll be lots of that sort of stuff. So watch for that when that agenda comes out. We do regional and local presentations on this issue as well. So if you're interested in me talking about this with your lake organization, I can't always get to every lake, but certainly if you have meetings on Zoom, it's really easy to do this. And I am happy to jump on a Zoom and talk to people about this issue. We work with local governments, counties, local organizations to figure out what they can do for their own lake or lakes in terms of ordinance development or other ways to influence both by education, not just by regulation, the way things are being impacted. And then, of course, we do advocacy as well. So someone asked the question of whether or not there's any legislation that's going on. There is not currently. Where there has been legislation nationwide, it has largely failed, and it is frankly difficult to craft legislation that will really solve problems that we're seeing in a particularly effective way. So what we have really, the state we really are at right now is we're looking at what's going on locally. There's lots of ordinances that are out there that are handling enhanced wakes or other capacity issues in different ways. So we're kind of watching to see how what bubbles up, what works and what doesn't. There are some counties that are looking to take inventory and classify their lakes so that they're able to then maybe try to push recreation of particular types to the lakes within the county that is best suited for that recreation. So there's that sort of thing. And then we are talking to the Department of Natural Resources about both enforcement and just the topic in general. And by we, I mean myself, as well as there are some other organizations, local and regional groups that have started talking to the agency and to the Natural Resources Board about this issue. So the agency is aware of it. They are considering it. I don't really have anything to report on anything that's necessarily going to happen in the near term, but it is something that is on their radar, and we continue to talk to DNR about it. And again, I was so excited about the regional conversations that I wanted to make sure you saw it on both slides, because I think it's going to be an important tool and a good chance for lakes to get together and talk to each other about what's going on. So that is the most of what we're doing in 2023. There's a lot on the plate, I can say, for our group of volunteers, myself, who's full-time, and my membership guy, who is not even half-time at this point. So we have a lot to do, and we are doing our best to get as much of this done as we possibly can. And at this point, you might be saying, well, I'd like to help out with that. Maybe Kathy's going to jump in and we'll talk to you a little bit about the different ways that you can help out. I told Kathy that this would be the sort of the couple minute when I like throw to her like they do in public television membership drives.
Okay, so we know that you're here because you love your lakes, and we love our lakes too, and we want to keep them healthy and well managed for future generations, not just for our grandchildren and great grandchildren, but for um, all the people, all the young generations coming forward. I grew up on a lake, on Shawano Lake, actually, where we did not have property. We had to use the public access. And it was still a huge, huge part of my life and helped me learn how to enjoy and respect the outdoors. So if your lake organization is a member of Wisconsin Lakes, that's awesome. If it's not, start talking about why not and what could you do. Stone Lake is a 500-acre lake. We're a member, but at our last board meeting, someone said, well, didn't we give more last year? Give some extra last year? And the board ended up unanimously sending another donation. It was not a huge donation, but as they say on public television and in the political ads, every little bit helps. Are you a member? Even if your organization is, it helps if you become a member too. So if you can give $30 or more, we would love to consider you a member. And then another idea that came up today was, do you know an organization, a business that would like to donate? We would ask for any types of contributions that can help us beef up our staff so Mike doesn't have to do all the work himself and can, in fact, accomplish more if he has some additional staff to work with. You will be getting, many of you, or have recently received, like Dave said, letters about the 2022 holiday campaign.
Looks like Kathy's internet may have frozen up. Is that Kathy or is that me that's frozen, Dan?
I think it was Kathy.
All right. She was so excited about this that that she overran her bandwidth.
Oh, she's back.
Oh, she's back.
Yeah. Okay, I was afraid everybody left. I don't know if you heard me, but please respond to the request you got in the mail, or if you didn't, just go online or send us a donation to the address on the screen.
Yeah, the way I like to think about it, if you are a member of a lake organization that is a member and you haven't given in the past, if every member of a lake organization became an individual member at the $30 level, I did the math at one point, and I think we would probably triple or possibly quadruple what we actually usually take in a year. So every little bit counts, and it certainly does. There are so many pressing needs, especially within the realm. There's so much that needs to be done around recreational impacts, especially that the more help you can provide, the better. And of course, do all the things that you're already doing that don't involve giving. Contact your legislators, be a member, be an active volunteer on your lake in whatever capacity you can be, and keep doing all of that good stuff. So you can donate at wisconsinlakes.org, or the address that you can mail it to is on the screen. That concludes our fundraising portion of this meeting, unless Kathy, you have something else to add?
No.
And I know it is a little after 6 o'clock, but we got a little late start, and I'm fine hanging on. If there are more questions, Dan, that people would like to have answered, we can spend a little bit of time answering those.
There are. Right now there are three. Jean Perry asked for cleaner lake water, what, if any, consideration is given towards electric motors instead of traditional gas motors? This goes back to, I think, some of the legislative action and the focus of clean waters. So
Yeah, I think that definitely there's nothing that I know of that's in the work that is trying to um, push or incentivize electric motors, as far as I know. That is something that we've sort of started because as we've seen more electric cars come into existence, it's the electric boat is not just going to be the small boat that is used for fishing to get around at a relatively slow speed. I think we're going to eventually see larger electric boats. As an aside, one of the interesting potential consequences of that is that it could end up impacting the amount of funding that the state gets for lake management and for the surface water grants, because all of those funds come from what's called the motorboat gas tax. So it's a chunk of the regular gas tax that is devoted to motorboats. The idea being that motorboats use gas, they're paying a tax, and so part of that gas tax money should be used for lake management. And if you have less boats that are using less gas, then there's less money that's going through that. So that's sort of I would call that probably a good problem to have if we have more boats that are using less gas. And that we would have to find ways to prop up that funding, but that is a potential issue that's coming.
We have another question. And this goes back to our fundraising, would we consider a GoFundMe page for donations?
So I haven't looked at GoFundMe in a while. That we are able to do sort of similar things, and we do have the ability to take electronic donations. If you go to wisconsinlakes.org, there's our buttons down at the bottom that are say join or donate. You can it doesn't matter what form you end up using. If you've never been a member and just do a donate, if you give more than $30, you will end up becoming a member of Wisconsin Lakes. Unless you tell us you absolutely don't want to be. But the forms all kind of dump into the same place, and when Dave processes the donations, he'll make the judgment of whether or not you've become a member or not. So don't get hung up on what the forms say. So it's easier for us if we don't have a lot of multiple ways to be taking in the funds. So if we can push the donations through those portals, that probably works the best for us. But if someone started a GoFundMe, on their own in order to collect money from friends and relatives or something like that, and it ended up coming to us, I'm not gonna turn that down.
Thanks, Mike. Deborah, I'll handle this one. Deborah Studley commented a book to consider for everyone: Ripple Effects: How We're Loving Our Lakes to Death by Ted Ralsey. Ted is a writer, author, lake protector, advocate living in Oneida County. I know Ted very well. He is currently the president of the Oneida County Lakes and Rivers Association, and when I was in Lake Leaders Crew 11, he and I got to know each other so that we could introduce each other to the rest of the group at the very beginning. He's been a good friend ever since. And yes, thank you for the shameless plug of the book. It's a very good book. And he did a lot of interviews, including, I think, Mike, you're quoted in the book, as am I.
I believe so. Yeah. Patrick Goggin from Extension Lakes is in there. Some folks from Minnesota. It is a very good book. I wrote about it on our blog, and it was in one of our Lake Connection newsletters that went out recently. And it's a great read.
It is.
How does one purchase it?
It was.
It's University of Wisconsin Press. A great way to find out would be to go to our blog and find that post. So if you go to wisconsinlakes.org, click on the news tab, you should be able to get to the post about it, because I have a link to where you can purchase it there. We are not.
And if I'm not mistaken, he is selling the book probably at the Lakes Convention as well in April.
I believe he will be there. Yes. So
Yeah. We're getting a couple more.
that was a shameless plug, by the way. We're not getting any kickback for that.
Richard Jens asked, has any consideration been given to moving the Lakes Convention to May so more snowbirds could attend? I think that from a personal perspective, I understand that question very well, but also now you begin to bump into regular association meetings and Lake District meetings and regional conventions that happen in the summertime. So, but Mike, what's our feeling relative to moving it to May?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why it is when it is. One is simply when the convention center is available. It bounces around from year to year. This is about the April 19th to the 21st that it'll be. This year is probably the latest that it's been in a very long time. I think last year it was the very first week of April, if not. I know it has been partially in March in the past. We also constantly have to balance the ability of the agency staff and consultants and people that work out in the field who don't necessarily have the time once the ice is out and they're ready to get out in the field to come to a 2 or 3 day convention. So if you talk to those people, they usually advocate for it being a little bit earlier. So that's why we have kind of allowed it to bounce around. We're in a strange position of being at just the size and revenue price point that really the Holiday Inn is one of the few places that, in Stephen's point, is one of the few places that we really can have it and have it the way that we want it to be. And so we're a little bit stuck with those dates because of that. But I hear that, and that's a comment that we get all of the time that unfortunately we just have to live with.
Well, Mike and Sarah Winju from Extension Lakes also points out we do have the virtual option of joining. So
I was actually just going to point that out. Yeah, and Sarah can write and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're going to attempt to have 2 sessions, concurrent sessions streamed at a time this year.
Sarah, that's correct.
Yeah, last year we did 1, and so this year we're gonna try to have two live streams going.
Okay, I'm just going to try to move through these relatively quickly. Jill Edwards, I believe she's referring to Ted Rolsey's book. Ted has his own website. Yes, he does. I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Jill, for pointing that out. So you could probably get his book there. I'm sure if you Google Ted Rolsey, it'll pop up.
Yep.
Scott Oderson mentioned that there may be a special taxing requirement need for electric boats or electric motors, and Mike, you touched on that. So yes, how do we get around the fact that it now impacts the gasoline tax? And Shelley Hildebrandt, does Wisconsin Lakes already provide training regarding available grant opportunities, or would they consider doing so? Oh, good question.
Yeah, so they're actually the surface water grant program at DNR offers trainings throughout the year, as does Extension Lakes, and will sometimes piggyback on that as well. Because there are other people that do that already, have those sorts of that sort of programming set up. It's usually not us that organizes it, but I certainly do try to promote it when it comes up. So the surface water grants, for people who have not tried to get one for their lake before, though the pre-application for those is usually due in the middle of September. It was September 15th this year. I think it will be that again next year. One piece of news that some people may not know is that if you do have a surface water grant or have been active with the surface water grant program and know Allison McCulloch at DNR, Allie is leaving the department in a couple of weeks to take a job with the water center at UW-Madison. So she will not be heading up the grant program, surface water grant program anymore, and the hiring process for that position will take place. The agency did get approval to go ahead and hire someone for it because it obviously is a crucial position.
Okay, Sarah Winju is making a comment. There is a funding stream at the convention with proposed talks focused on DNR funding, Wisconsin Natural Resources Foundation, Midwest Glacial Lakes, Habitat grants, and USDA funding. So at the convention, there will be it looks like a host of talks focused on grants and funding for work on lakes. Thank you, Sarah. And that wraps up all of the questions and comments we've gotten, and I'm noticing that our participants are steadily dropping off. So I think, Mike, with that, we're going to end the question session.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for attending, listening. Best of luck to you in the new year with everything, all your endeavors regarding lakes and waters and anything else, and happy holidays. Kathy or anybody else on the board have anything else you'd like to add before we say goodnight?
Oh, I would just also send my wishes for the coming year, and I hope it's a good one for all our lakes around the state.
And I will throw out a thanks to Kathy and Dave Pausch and Dan for helping out with this, and to our whole board of directors for the great work that they do. It's really been a lot of fun working with you in 2022, and I'm excited with our new members for 2023. This is hopefully going to be another good year. So with that, I will say goodnight, and we will talk to you again in the new year.